Why don't people travel on the other side of Azeroth? Well, first off, do they? The answer is no, not so far as we know. We do know that there is a decent amount of trade going on the western side of Kalimdor, partly in thanks to the World of Warcraft Traveler book. Most likely, much of that trade takes place between the mainland of Kalimdor, Teldrassil and the Azure Isles. However, we do know that there is some, but not a lot, of trade going on the western side of central Kalimdor, aka around Desolus, Stone Town and Quel'Thalas, mostly independent ships with a few clearly defined trade posts, but who also trade with the local gnolls, Centaur, Tauren and so on. Besides trade, we do know that Admiral Proudmoore of Quel'Thalas sent a fleet to circumvent Kalimdor, but for an unknown reason that fleet has disappeared and has never been mentioned since. It could be that they vanished once they stumbled into Oldham, or maybe they met some gruesome fate near Ahn'Qiraj, or they could have just run into a storm, it's unknown. As to the eastern side of the Eastern Kingdoms, we do know that the Forest Trolls sail those waters and do so fairly competently. They did not make up a big part of the Horde's navy in the Second War, and they had a fleet which competed with the High Elves at times. Other than them, we do know that some pirates sometimes sail on the eastern side of the Eastern Kingdoms, although not frequently, since there isn't really much to plunder there. And recently, with Cataclysm, we have a few goblin outposts. The High Elves, aka the Blood Elves, with their civilization decimated, do have a small fleet, but at least before the Third War, kept mostly to their own waters. So that is what we do know that travels on the eastern side of the Eastern Kingdoms and the western side of Kalimdor. Basically, scattered trade ships, some pirates, and the elves who mostly keep to themselves. Not exactly a great batch to make explorers from. You should also keep in mind that, other than the goblins and the night elves, almost nobody from Kalimdor ever ventured to the Eastern Kingdoms and vice versa. Travel across the Great Sea only really began after the Third War, when people from Lordaeron fled to Kalimdor, built their own societies there, mingled with the local societies, and basically made the two sides of the world connect with each other. Though it's worth noting that the humans had colonies in Northrend before, the zombie scourge thing. Anyway, getting back to the subject, why don't we travel on the backside of Azeroth now that we are apparently in this great age of exploration? The answer is, well, before Cataclysm there wasn't really any need to. The western side of Kalimdor, with the exception of the Night Elf lands, is mostly untamed wilds and a pretty poor place to construct a civilization. The eastern side of the Eastern Kingdoms was, for the most part, a wall of mountains, with the exception of a swamp, a kingdom of isolationist elves, and bloodthirsty trolls. There is also some information, though not a lot mind you, that states that the seas on the back of Azeroth tend to be much more dangerous, but that is also based partly on speculation. With Cataclysm though, that possibility seems all the more nearer. The Cataclysms cleared some of the mountains of the Eastern Kingdoms and emboldened the goblins, especially since their capital was lost, to establish trade posts there, namely Fuse Light in the Blasted Lands and Bogpaddle in the Swamp of Sorrows. There's also a ghost town of Gilneons on the brand new shores of the Blasted Lands, but we don't really talk about them. The Cataclysm also diminished much of the world's resources, a pretty big motivator to start exploring and get some new lands to exploit. Paint this continent red, anyone? So, TLDR. It's mostly impractical and dangerous, to our knowledge nobody has done it, although we are getting close to the moment where someone could do it. So, what do you think of this type of video? Would you like me to do more in the future for similar one-note topics that don't really warrant a full lore facts video? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and I will see you all later. Farewell.
I'm in charge now.